how to connect the new version 9 voice box to a harness, a wiring harness for the old style voice box. The new style voice box incorporates two JST type connectors, a 10-way and a 20-way. It also incorporates a 9-way D-type connector, as the old version did, but this is not to be connected directly to the D-type plug on the old type harness, because this one is specifically for serial communications. So what we need to do is to have a small interface harness into which we're going to connect the existing wiring harness. Now, if you have the existing voice display, it's only going to have functions on the normal auto and pursuit indicators. So we take those connections which used to go through this 9-way connector and connect them to the 20-way JST connector. This test rig that I'm using was actually developed when we had a much earlier version of dash modules, and as such the connector to DM3, this one, doesn't actually incorporate the potentiometers for brightness control, or the switches which are used, switches and push buttons which are used to control various functions. So what I've done for the purpose of this demo is to hook up a box with two potentiometers and push buttons and a switch, and we're going to link that in to the 9-way harness. We also have the connections for the switches and push buttons brought out separately, and they're going to match up to the connectors from the new dash module, the new voice box, via the yellow, white and blue wires. We also have, coming from here, a grey and brown wire. The brown wire is a high switched input from the lights, and the grey wire is a low switched input to enable resetting of the module. So I've hooked up this little interface harness to the connector which comes straight from the existing harness configured for a old version of voice box, to this little interface that's connected to the switches and potentiometers, and into the 9-way interface harness to here. I've also connected up the serial communications harness here. I've also hooked up the white, yellow and blue wires from the switch box into here. So if you have the harness hooked up for the old style of voice box, you'll need to provide some ground switched inputs in order to use the switches on the new style of module. These reset and lights connections I've just brought out to a terminal block, and they can be connected as required. And I've also connected the dash top indicator output from the new module to a breadboard with dash top indicators on. So let's just power up. And there we go. All working as per the old module. So just to summarize, this is the interface harness which is used for the connection to the old style wiring harness. This connector here is the 9-way D-type socket within the harness, and this connects to the old harness if it's wired for the old style of voice box. And this is the socket looking at the rear, so we have no connection on pin 1. We have accessory power coming in on pin 2, secondary ignition power on pin 3, the normal auto and pursuit low switched connections on pins 4, 5 and 6, the potentiometers on pins 7 and 8, and a ground connection on pin 9. Now that ground connection goes to pin 10 of the JST 10-way connector, and also to pins 19 and 20 of the 20-way JST connector. These normal auto and pursuit connections now go across to the 20-way JST connector, and then we have these additional connections coming out here just as wires which you can connect to low switched signals for the switch 1, the push button 1 and 2, and the reset signal, and also a high switched 12 volt signal from the lights.